I am happy to be here, popping on in for our live stream content delivery today. I'm also going to create some time at the end of our discussion for some Q&A. So I invite you, as we are going through our topic for today, just to type your questions in the chat, and I will make some time to address them in the time that we have left. So let's just dive right in. Now, communication is really of vital importance in any relationship, but it can be especially challenging when you or your partner has fearful avoidant attachment style. Now, in this segment, we're going to explore how and why communication might be confusing or it might escalate into arguments, as well as 6 effective communication tips on how to communicate with our fearful avoidant partners. And so by the end of our segment here today, you will be able to improve your relationship with your fearful avoidant partner by learning how to effectively communicate with them, and that will lead to a stronger and deeper emotional connection with them. You'll also gain a better understanding of the stressors behind the confusion and the arguments that can arise in communication with your partner, and that's going to help you reduce the feelings of frustration and resentment. You'll also be able to increase your confidence and your skills in communication, allowing you to approach those difficult conversations in a calm and productive manner, which will result in greater emotional stability and security for your relationship overall. Now, I also invite you to take the communication quiz, which you will find in the caption of this video. This is going to help you maximize your results if you decide that you are ready to put these steps into action. So again, if you would like to take the quiz, you can do that just by clicking on a link in the caption of this video. Now, before we get started, if you are new to my channel, welcome. And also, who am I and why should you sit here and listen to me talk about these things? Well, my name is Brianamacwilliam, and I'm a licensed and board-certified creative arts therapist. I have more than 15 years in the field helping adults struggling with insecure attachment cultivate those soul-shaking, passionate partnerships that they want. And I do this using my trademark method, which assumes a trauma-informed somatic approach to healing attachment styles in a spiritual framework. And so if you like what you see in here today, then I encourage you to like this video, subscribe, follow along for more related topics like this. I take all comments into consideration when I create new video series and for live stream Q&As, and I wouldn't want you to miss out. So with that, let's just dive right into our topic for today. So first, I'd like to talk about why is it that it can be difficult to communicate with our fearful avoidant partners? Well, fearful avoidant partners, they tend to have a deep-seated fear of intimacy and of vulnerability. And so that can make it difficult for them to express their emotions and their feelings very accurately or honestly. So they often struggle with trust issues, and they may push people away when they start to feel too close. And so as a result, they may shut down or they avoid difficult conversations altogether, and that can make it challenging for their partners to communicate effectively with them. They also struggle to self-soothe, and they struggle to receive soothing from others. And that's usually because historically their source of comfort was also a source of threat. And so their nervous system became hardwired to remain in a heightened state of activation and mobilization to fight, flight, or freeze in relationships, even when confronted with what might appear to be a minor challenge or a stressor for other people. So for example, I might have you imagine that you and your partner have planned a date night, but you're running late from work, and so you decide to stop off and buy them some flowers. When you arrive, however, your partner seems to be visibly upset and withdrawn. You try to initiate conversation and to find out what's wrong, but your partner seems shut down and refuses to engage with you, even though their body language and their facial expression are vibrating with intensity. Now, you can sense that they're angry and they're frustrated, but you can't imagine that being only a few minutes late would induce that kind of extreme reaction. So then you start to feel hurt and rejected, and that only makes you start to insist on explanations for their confusing behavior. But then that inspires your partner to draw back even further. Now, in this scenario, our fearful avoidant partner may have become triggered by the delay or the unexplained change in plans, which they perceive as disruptive to the stability of the relationship overall. So that in turn can switch on a state of threat in their nervous system. And then they might leap to a series of negative foregone conclusions about the relationship based on past traumatic experiences and start projecting those experiences onto the present moment. So perhaps they assumed that their partner was cheating, or that they didn't love them enough, or they weren't respecting them by taking their time into consideration, which means that it's only going to lead to further disrespect down the line with more important things. And so this creates a spiral of negative self-talk, stimulating feelings of worthlessness or not being lovable. And then because our fearful avoidant partners have difficulty expressing their feelings in a clear and direct way, it might lead to things like shutting down or lashing out while feeling overwhelmed. And so the seemingly minor slight is actually taken quite personally. And so in this case, whether it is consciously or unconsciously done to regain power and control, our fearful avoidant partner is using a type of punitive emotional withdrawal. So this puts their partner into a state of emotional confusion and distress as well, which from a certain perspective levels the playing field, because it confuses their partner and it induces those frustrated feelings due to a lack of communication, which is how the fearful avoidant partner was probably feeling all along when the partner didn't show up on time. But as a result, now everyone has their defenses up. No one is able to support or reassure the other, and there is no clear path to repair. But by recognizing the signs of fearful avoidant attachment style and implementing the communication tips that we are going to outline in this video, couples can learn to navigate those challenges and build stronger, more secure relationships. So if any of this sounds familiar to you, or you have encountered an experience like this, I'd love it if you'd let me know in the comments there. If you want a more detailed explanation about the challenges of disorganized attachment or fearful avoidance, it's also called disorganized attachment, then I would invite you to check out another video that I have on my playlist on my YouTube channel. It's called Dating with Disorganized Attachment: Traits, Love, and Intimacy. So before we dive into our tips, I would also like to just acknowledge some of the strengths that come from having a disorganized attachment style. Now, due to the higher levels of contrast or conflict in their romantic experiences, I tend to consider folks with fearful avoidant or disorganized attachment style spice of lifers, because it is the contrast in life that forces us to expand and to grow. And I believe that the struggles that many spice of lifers have is evidence of an even greater calling for spiritual expansion. And so, to accept this calling, they must begin with the practice of self compassion and establishing supportive, non romantic relationships that will support them when they are both in and outside of romantic relationships. And so, this is the result of being able to be both inside and outside of our experiences. And when we can connect to someone that isn't so charged, like a therapist or a counselor or a good friend, then we can achieve a sense of objective perspective in our romantic relationships, which tend to be more highly charged situations, right? And so if we can manage to do this, we can seek and find the support, then the result is we have a reduced sense of hypersensitivity to the inner critic and to other people's expectations. We also have an increased sense of self-trust and confidence, and that is going to support an ability to relax while experiencing emotional stability in relationships. And so when we can meet that kind of growth challenge, then our struggles can be turned into strengths. So, for example, hypervigilance can become charming, because in childhood, it's likely that a state of increased mobilization and hypervigilance actually made you very aware of what people want and what they need. And so, therefore, you became charming in order to survive those circumstances. Tongue-tied can become creative. So oftentimes words can be a little bit tough to conjure, but as a result, we can tap into our creativity and find alternative ways to express ourselves non-verbally and outside of the box. Defensive becomes advocating. So having often felt like you might have been at a disadvantage, this can make you a fierce advocate and a defender of the underdog, right? Perhaps cynicism becomes savvy. So, more than other people, our spice of lifers have often seen and understand the darker side of humanity, which means that they are rarely caught by surprise and they can suss out a situation like nobody's business. And that is a very good friend to have at your back, right? Now, if you would like to learn more about the strengths of disorganized or fearful avoidant attachment, I do have another video on this topic, which you can check out on my YouTube channel, Strengths of the Spice of Lifer. And we go a lot more in depth with this. So with that, let's just dive right into our tips. So the first communication tip for communicating with your fearful avoidant partner: avoid power struggles. So fearful avoidant partners, they may be more likely to engage in power struggles as a defense mechanism, right? This is to protect their vulnerability. So they might pick fights over what appear to be trivial matters because it distances, deflects, and distracts from emotional vulnerability. So if you feel a power struggle brewing, you might try to diffuse it by taking a step back or de-escalating the situation by aligning yourself with them rather than putting yourself on the opposite side of the fence. So for example, you might say, I don't want us to fight, but I do want to help you with these big feelings. Is there a way for me to be your ally instead of your enemy in this? So some people might say, well, can we take a step back and calm down before we can talk about this? And I might advise against that. Because what happens when you say that to someone who's more of a spice of lifer, this would work with someone who's more dismissive avoidant. With someone who's more of a spice of lifer, not so much. Because in that moment, you're telling them they're too intense. And they've heard that 1,000 times before. So do not leave them alone with their big feelings. If you want to show up for them and avoid a power struggle, try to be their ally instead of their enemy. Okay. The second tip, along those lines, you want to create a safe space. What does that mean? Well, we want to ensure that our partner feels heard and validated by creating a safe and non-judgmental space. So for example, you might say, I'm here for you, and I'm not going to judge or criticize you for sharing your thoughts and feelings. And then don't judge or criticize them for their thoughts and feelings. And I might also encourage you to try to be very much in control of your affect and your presentation. Okay. And this might require some emotional grounding inside of yourself before engaging in that conversation, because the spice of lifer can often struggle to organize their thoughts and feelings. And so then they can express them defensively because those were the tools that they were taught. So you're going to have to remember not to take that personally and maintain an objective stance so that you can create some safety in the relationship for them. Okay. Now, the next tip is to validate their feelings. I might argue this is a tip that we would want to use with everyone, no matter what your attachment style, but this is particularly true for our spice of lifers. Now, when your partner shares their emotions with you, you want to let them know that you hear and understand them, even if you don't necessarily agree. So for example, you might say, I hear you. And even though I don't feel the same way about that specific thing, I do know what it's like to be upset about something that's important to me, and I can empathize on that level. And I really want to support you in this. Right. Tip number 4, you want to recognize their strengths. Okay. So fearful avoidant partners can have unique strengths and positive qualities that are often overlooked, such as being charming and charismatic, being creative and advocating, as well as savvy and intuitive. And so reminding them of their strengths can help you ground and stabilize them in a conversation when they may become emotionally overwhelmed or start to slip into a negative and downward thought spiral. So for example, you might say something like, I realize that your experience gives you a unique perspective on this, and I may not be seeing the whole picture. Please help me understand what you intuitively know. Okay. And tip number 5, you want to be specific and avoid vague language. Okay, this is super important. I would argue this is super important for any attachment style, particularly insecure attachment styles, but especially true here. So fearful avoidant partners, they may be more likely to engage in that negative thought spiral or having fearful expectations and assumptions when the communication is vague or unclear. So you want to be specific and clear in your communication and help to alleviate that insecurity and that anxiety. So, for example, instead of saying things like, I'll call you or I'll see you later, which could be interpreted in a variety of ways, you want to say, I'll see you at 6 p.m. at the coffee shop on Main Street on Thursday, right? You want to be super specific, letting them know when they will see you again, okay? That's going to help your partner feel less anxious about the plan. So I'm going to just take a pause right there, and I would love for you to just let me know in the comments if you relate to any of this, or if you have experience, or maybe you've tried tips like this in the past before, and did you notice that they worked for you or they didn't work for you? I would love to know your experience with this. And if you are someone who is fearful avoidant, how do you feel like you would respond to tips like this? Let me know in the comments. Now, moving on to our last tip, tip number 6. Be consistent, right? We want to be consistent. So, fearful avoidant partners may struggle with consistency themselves in their own behavior and in their communication. However, when you are consistent in your own behavior and in your communication, that can help to establish trust and create a more stable relationship. Do not look to your fearful avoidant partner to set the tone of the relationship. You set the tone of the relationship and extend the invitation and give them the choice to join you or not. Okay? The more you rely upon them to be driving the ship, the more anxious they're going to get. Okay. So, for example, if your partner is hesitant to make plans or they're feeling a bit skittish, try making plans with a group of friends instead. And that's going to take the pressure off. And then follow through with the plans that you make, whether or not they decide to join you. That's going to demonstrate that you are not overly dependent upon them, and that's going to feel safer for them. It's going to allow them to move towards you. Now, that means that they are also more likely to join you in the future, and eventually it's not going to feel so overwhelming or like a lot of pressure to connect with you in a more intimate dating context, because they already have a sense of who you are and what to expect, and so they feel safe putting themselves in that situation. Okay. All right, so with that, let's just tap into our final thoughts. So let's summarize these tips in brief. So the first tip, you want to avoid power struggles. Secondly, you want to create a safe space. Thirdly, you want to validate their feelings. Number 4, you want to recognize their strengths. Number 5, you want to be specific and avoid vague language. And number 6, you want to be consistent. Be consistent. I can't say that one enough. Now, I do want to add one more bonus tip to emphasize for you if you have a fearfully avoidant partner or a disorganized partner. And it is that you want to proactively practice emotional grounding for yourself. You want to ground yourself by taking deep breaths, imagining a safe and calm place inside your body, leaning against something for support before engaging in conversation. So the spice of lifer, they struggle to organize their emotions. So the more emotionally grounded that you can be and practice maintaining an objective stance, it's going to create more safety and stability for your partner when they're feeling overwhelmed. And so that way, you're less likely to be triggered into overwhelm yourself or to take on their struggles very personally. Okay. Now, if you are the disorganized or fearfully avoidant partner, and let's say your partner is anxious or avoidant themselves, and you find that their way of responding to things is pushing you all over the map, and you're starting to feel polarized by their triggers, then I would invite you to check out another video on my YouTube channel. This one is called 8 Triggers for Anxious and Avoidant Partners, What to Say Instead. So this might help you to find your ground when you're struggling with someone who also has insecure attachment style. Now, additionally, if you are the spice of lifer, I want to assure you that it is possible to build trust and to learn to feel safe and impassioned with a secure and loving partner. And this really starts by confronting your own inner critic with compassion and with self-love so that you can heal your inner child and better receive the love that someone is trying to give you. Now, it can take time, but with patience and understanding from both of you, a healthier relationship dynamic will emerge. Okay. And if you're interested in learning more about how to heal the inner child, I have a wonderful playlist on my YouTube channel, specifically how to heal the inner child with parts work and creative arts therapies interventions. We also do a demo, and you get to watch me do this with someone else in conversation. You get to see how we put these things into practice. So I highly recommend checking out that playlist on my YouTube channel. Okay. Now, if you liked today's content, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, follow along. I would love to know your experience and your feedback. Again, I take all feedback into consideration when I'm creating future video topics. And if you want some support in putting these tips into action, I invite you to check out the quiz in the caption of this video. It's going to help you know how much your attachment styles may be affecting the communication in your relationships, and there'll be a little bit more information on that on the outcome page. So thank you for joining me here. I hope that you appreciated this content, and I look forward to seeing you for our next segment when we're going to be talking about 6 effective communication tips with secure partners. Now, for those of you that are able to stick with me for a minute, I am going to transition to answering a few questions in the time that we have left. I'm just going to pull up my chat box over here. And let's see. Thank you for this and for all your content. Oh, good. I'm glad that you like that. So I don't see any questions at this time. If any more questions pop up, absolutely feel free to type them in the caption of the live stream video. I will be following the comments and the feedback between now and next week. And of course, I always take all questions into consideration for future video content like this. So thank you for watching. I really appreciate that. And I hope you'll come back for our next segment on Thursday, same time, same place. We're going to be talking about secure partners. Bye now. Thank you very much.